The fifth Tuesday, we talk about family. It was the first week in September, back to school week, and after 90, after 35 consecutive attempts, my old professor didn't have a class waiting for him on the college campus. Boston was teeming with students, double parked on side streets, unloading trunks, and here was Murray in his study. It seemed wrong, like those football players who finally retire and have to face that first Sunday at home, watching on TV, thinking I could still do that. I've learned from dealing with those players that it is best to leave them alone when their old seasons come around. Don't say anything, but then I didn't need to remind Murray of his dwindling time. For our taped conversations, we had switched from handheld microphones because it was too difficult now for Murray to hold anything that long to the lavalier kind popular with TV news people. You can clip this onto a collar or repel. Of course, since Murray only wore soft cotton shirts that hung loosely on his ever shrinking frame, the microphone sagged and flopped, and I had to reach over and adjust it frequently. Murray seemed to enjoy this because it brought me close to him in hugging range. And his need for physical affection was stronger than ever. When I leaned in, I heard his wheezing breath and his weak coughing, and he smacked his lips softly before he swallowed. Well, my friend, he said, what are we talking about today? How about family? Family. He mulled it over for a moment. Well, you see mine, all around me. Uh, he nodded to photos on his bookshelves of Murray as a child with his grandmother, Murray as a young man with his brother David, Murray with his wife Charlotte, Murray with his two sons, Rob, a journalist in Tokyo, and John, a computer expert in Boston. I think, in light of what we've been talking about all these weeks, family becomes even more important. He said, the fact is, there is no foundation, no secure ground upon which people may stand today if it isn't the family. Which people may stand today if it isn't the family. It's become quite clear to me as I've been sick. If you don't have the support and love and caring and concern that you get from a family, you don't have much at all. Love is so supremely important. As our great poet Auden said, love each other or perish. Love each other or perish. I wrote it down. Auden said that. Love each other or perish. Maurice said, it's good. No? And it's so true. Without love, we are birds with broken wings. Say I was divorced, or living alone, or had no children. This disease, what I'm going through, would be so much harder. I'm not sure I could do it. Sure, people would come visit, friends, associates, but it's not the same as having someone who will not leave. It's not the same as having someone whom you know has an eye on you, is watching you the whole time. This is part of what a family is about, not just love, but letting others know there's someone who's watching out for them. It's what I missed so much when my mother died. What I call you spiritual security, knowing that your family will be there watching out for you. Nothing else will give you that. Not money, not fame. He shook me he shoot me a look, not work, he added. He added it. He added. Raising a family was one of those issues on my little list. Things you want to get right before it's too late. I told Murray about my generation's dilemma with having children, how we often saw them as trying us down, making us into these parent things that we didn't want to did that we didn't want to be. I told Murray about my generation's dilemma with having children, how we often saw them as trying us down, making us into these parent things that we didn't want to be. I admitted to some of these emotions myself. Yet when I looked at Murray, I wondered if I were in his shoes, about to die, and I had no family, no children. Would the emptiness be unbearable? He had raised his two sons to be loving and caring, and like Murray, they were not shy with their affection. Had he so desired, they would have stopped. Had he so desired, had they would have stopped what they were doing to be with their father every minute of his final months. But that was not what he wanted. Do not stop your lives, he told them. Otherwise, this disease will have ruined three of us instead of one. In this way, even as he was dying, he showed respect for his children's world. Little wonders that when they sat with him, there was a waterfall of affection, lots of kisses and jokes, and crunching by the side of the bed, holding hands. Whenever people ask me about having children or not having children, I never tell them what to do, Maurice said now, looking at a photo of his oldest son. I simply say, there is no experience like having children. That's all. There is no substitute for it. You cannot do it with a friend. You cannot do it with a lover. If you want the experience of having complete responsibility for another human being and to learn how to love and bond with the deepest way, then you should have children. So you would do it again? I asked. I glanced at the photo. Rob was kissing Murray on the forehead, and Murray was laughing with his eyes closed. Would I do it again? He said to me, looking surprised. Mitch, I wouldn't have missed the experience for anything. Even though I wouldn't have missed that experience for anything, even though he swallowed and put the picture in his lap. Even though there is a painful price to pay, he said, because you'll be leaving them. Because I'll be leaving them soon. He pulled his lips together, closed his eyes, and I watched the first teardrop fall down the side of his cheek. And now, he whispered, you talk. Me? Your family. I know about your parents. I met them years ago at graduation. You have a sister too, right? Yes, I said. Older. Yes, older. Older. And no, and one brother, right? I nodded. Younger. Like me, Maurice said. I have a younger brother. Like you, I said. He also came to young graduation, didn't he? I blinked, and in my mind I saw all of us there 16 years earlier. The hot sun, the blue robes, squinting as we put our arms around each other and posed for Instamatic photos. Some saying 1, 2, 3. What is it? Marie said, noticing my sudden quiet. What's on your mind? Nothing, I said, changing the subject. The truth is, I do indeed have a brother, a blonde-haired, hazel-eyed, 2 years younger brother who looks so unlike me, or my dark-haired sister, that we used to tease him by claiming strangers had left him as a baby on our doorstep. And one day we'd say, "They're coming back to get you." He cried when we said this, but we said it just the same. He grew up the way many youngest children grow up, pampered, adored, and inwardly tortured. He dreamed of being an actor or a singer. He re in enacted TV shows at the dinner table, playing every part. His bright smile practically jumping through his lips. I was the good student. He was the bad. I was obedient. He broke the rules. I stayed away from drugs and alcohol. He tried everything you could ingest. He moved to Europe. He moved to Europe not long after high school, preferring the more casual lifestyle he found there. Yet he remained the family favorite. When he visited home, in his wild and funny presence, I often felt stiff and conservative. As different as we were, I reasoned that our fates would shoot in opposite directions once we hit adulthood. I was right in all ways but one. From the day my uncle died, I believe that I would suffer a similar death, an untimely disease that would take me out. So I worked at a feverish pace and braced myself for cancer. I could feel its breath. I knew it was coming. I waited for it the way a condemned man waits for the executioner. And I was right. It came, but it missed me. It struck my brother. The same type of cancer as my uncle, the pancreas, a rare form. And so the youngest of our family with the blonde hair and the hazel eyes had the chemotherapy, chemotherapy and the radiation. His hair fell out, his face went gaunt as a skeleton. It's supposed to be me, I thought, but my brother was not me. And he was not my uncle. He was a fighter and had been since his youngest days when we wrestled in the basement. And he actually bit through my shoe until I screamed in pain and let him go. And so he fought back. He battled the disease in Spain, where he lived, with the aid of an experimental drug that was not and still is not available in the United States. He flew all over Europe for treatment. After 5 years of treatment, the drug appeared to chase the cancer into remission. That was the good news. The bad news was my brother didn't want me around. Not me, nor anyone in the family. Much as we tried to call and visit, he held us at bay, insisting that this fight was something he needed to do by himself. Months would pass without a word from him. Messages on his answering machine would go without a reply. I was ripped with guilt. I was ripped with guilt for what I felt I should be doing for him, and fueled with anger for his denying us the right to do it. So once again, I dove into work. I worked because I could control it. I worked because work was sensible and responsive. And each time I would call my brother's apartment in Spain and get the answering machine, him speaking in Spanish, another sign of how far apart we had drifted. I would hang up and work some more. Perhaps this is one reason I was drawn to Murray. He let me be where my brother wouldn't. Looking back, perhaps Murray knew this all along. It is a winter in my childhood on a snow-packed hill in our suburban neighborhood. My brother and I are on the sled. Him on the top, me on the bottom. I feel his chin on my shoulder, and his feet on the backs of my knees. The sled rumbles on icy patches beneath us. We pick up speed as we descend the hill. Car! Some yells. We see it coming down the street to our left. We scream and try to steer away, but the runners do not move. The driver slams his horn and hits his brakes, and we do what all kids do. We jump off in our hooded parkas. We rolled like logs down the cold, wet snow, thinking the next thing to touch us will be the hard rubber of a car tire. We are yelling, and we are tingling with fear, turning over and over, and the world upside down, right side up, upside down. And then nothing. We stop rolling and catch our breath and wipe the dripping snow from our faces. The driver turns down the street, wagging his finger. We are safe. Our sled has thudded quietly in a snowbank, and our friends are slapping us now, saying, "Cool," and "You could have died." I grin at my brother, and we are united by childish pride. That wasn't so hard, we think, and we were ready to take on death again. The sixth Tuesday, we talk about emotions. I walked past the mountain laurels and the Japanese maple up the bluestone steps of Murray's house. The white rain, the white rain gutter hung like a lid over the doorway. I rang the bell and was greeted not by Connie but by Murray's wife, Charlotte, a beautiful gray-haired woman who spoke in a littling voice. She was not often at home when I came by. She continued working at MIT as Murray wished, and I was surprised this morning to see her. Murray's having a bit of hard time today, she said. She stared over my shoulder for a moment, then moved toward the kitchen. "I'm sorry," I said. "No, no, he'll be happy to see you," she said quickly. "I'm sure." She stopped in the middle of the sentence, turning her head slightly, listening for something. Then she continued, I'm sure he'll feel better when he knows you're here." I lifted up the bags from the market, my normal food supply, I said jokingly, and she seemed to smile and fret at the same time. "There's already so much food. He hasn't eaten any from last time." This took me by surprise. He hasn't eaten any? I asked. She opened the refrigerator, and I saw familiar containers of chicken salad, vermicelli, vegetables, stuffed squash, all things I had brought for Murray. She opened the freezer, and there was even more. Murray can't eat most of this food. It's too hard. It's too hard for him to swallow. He has to eat soft things and liquid drinks now. But he never said anything, I said. Charlotte smiled. "He doesn't want to hurt your feelings." "It wouldn't have hurt my feelings. I just wanted to help him in some way. I just wanted to bring him something. You are bringing him something. He looks forward to your visit. He talks about having to do this project with you, how he has to concentrate and put the time aside. I think it's giving him a good sense of purpose. Again, she gave the faraway look, the tuning in something from somewhere else. I knew Morris' nights were becoming difficult, that he didn't sleep through them. And that meant Charlotte often didn't sleep through them either. Sometimes Murray would lie awake, coughing for hours. It would take that long to get the phlegm from his throat. There were healthcare workers now staying through the night, and all those visitors during the day, former students, fellow professors, meditation teachers tramping in and out of the house. On some days, Murray had half a dozen visitors, and they were often there when Charlotte returned from work. She handled it with patience, even though all those outsiders were sucking up her precious minutes with Murray. A sense of purpose, she continued. Yes, that's good. I hope so. I helped put the new food inside the refrigerator. The kitchen counter had all kinds of notes, messages, information, medical instructions. The table held more pill bottles than ever. Sailstone for his asthma, Ativan to help him sleep, naproxen for pain, along with a powdered milk mix and laxatives. From down the hall, we heard the sound of a door open. Maybe he is available now. Let me go check. Charlotte glanced again at my food, and I felt suddenly ashamed. All those reminders of things Murray would never enjoy. All these reminders of things Murray would never enjoy. The small horrors of his illness were growing, and when I finally sat down with Murray, he was coughing. More than usual, a dry, dusty cough that shook his chest and made his head jerk forward. After one violent surge, he stopped, closed his eyes, and took a breath. I sat quietly because I thought he was recovering from his exertion. Is the tape on? He said suddenly, his eyes still closed. Yes, I quickly said, pressing down the play and record buttons. What I'm doing now, he continued, his eye still closed, is teaching myself from the experience. Teaching yourself? Yes, teaching myself, and this is important. Not just for someone like me who is dying, but for someone like you who is perfectly healthy. Learn to detach myself, detach. He opened his eyes. He exhaled. You know what the Buddhists say? Don't cling to things, because everything is impermanent. But wait, I said, aren't you always talking about experiencing life? All the good emotions, all the bad ones? Yes. Well, how can you do that if you're detached? Oh, you're thinking, Mitch. But detachment doesn't mean you don't let the experience penetrate you. On the contrary, you let it penetrate you fully. That's how you're able to live it. I'm lost. Take any emotion, love for a woman, or grief for a loved one, or what I'm going through, fear and pain from a deadly illness. If you hold back on the emotions, if you don't allow yourself to go all the way through them, you can never get to being detached. You're too busy being afraid. You're afraid of the pain. You're afraid of the grief. You're afraid of the vulnerability that loving entails. But by throwing yourself into these emotions, by allowing yourself to dive in all the way over your head, even, You experience them fully and completely. You know what pain is. You know what love is. You know what grief is. And only then can you say, all right, I have experienced that emotion. I recognize that emotion. Now I need to detach from that emotion for a moment. Maurice stopped and looked me over, perhaps to make sure I was getting this right. I know you think this is just about dying. I know you think this is just about dying, he said. But it's like I keep telling you, when you learn how to die, you learn how to live. Murray talked about his most fearful moments when he felt his chest locked him heaving surge, or when he wasn't sure where his next breath would come from. These were horrifying times, he said, and his first emotions were horror, fear, anxiety. But once he recognized the feel of those emotions, their texture, their moisture, the shiver down the back, the quick flash of heat that crosses your brain, then he was able to say, okay, this is fear. Step away from it. Step away. I thought about how often this was needed in everyday life. How we feel lonely, sometimes to the point of tears, but we don't let those tears come because we are not supposed to cry. Or how we feel a surge of love for a partner, but we don't say anything because we are frozen with the fear of what those words might do the relationship do to the relationship. Maria's approach was exactly the opposite. Turn on the faucet. Wash yourself with the emotion. It won't hurt you, it will only help. If you let the fear inside, if you pull it on like a familiar shirt, then you can say to yourself, all right, it's just fear. I don't have to let it control me. I see it for what it is. Same for loneliness. You let go, let the tears flow, feel it completely, but eventually be able to say, all right, that was my moment with loneliness. I'm not afraid of feeling lonely, but now I'm gonna put that loneliness aside and know that there are other emotions in the world, and I'm gonna experience them as well. Detach, Morris said again. He closed his eyes, then coughed. Then he coughed again, then he coughed again, more loudly. Suddenly he was half choking. The congestion in his lungs, seemingly teasing him, jumping halfway up, then dropping back down, stealing his breath. He was gagging, then hacking violently, and he shook his hands in front of him. With his eyes closed, shaking his hands, he appeared almost possessed, and I felt my forehead break into a sweat. I instinctively pulled him forward and slapped the back of his shoulders, and he pushed a tissue to his mouth and spit out a wad of phlegm. The coughing stopped, and Marie dropped back into the foam pillows and sucked in air. You okay? You alright? I said, trying to hide my fear. I'm okay, Marie whispered, raising a shaky finger. Just wait a minute. We sat there quietly until his breathing returned to normal. I felt the perspiration on my scalp. He asked me to close the window. The breeze was making him cold. I didn't mention that it was 80 degrees outside. Finally, in a whisper, he said, I know how I want to die. I waited in silence. I want to die sterilely, peacefully, not like what just happened. And this is where detachment comes in. If I die in the middle of a coughing spell, like I just had, I need to be able to detach from the horror. I need to say, this is my moment. I don't want to leave the world in a state of fright. I want to know what's happening, accept it, get to a peaceful place, and let go. Do you understand? I nodded. Don't let go yet, I added quickly. Marie forced a smile. No, not yet. We still have work to do. Do you believe in reincarnation? Reincarnation? I asked. Perhaps. What would you come back as? If I had my choice, a gazelle. A gazelle? So graceful, so fast. A gazelle? Murray smiles at me. You think that's strange? I study his shrunken frame, the loose clothes, the socks, wrapped feet that rest stiffly on foam rubber cushions, unable to move, like a prisoner in leg irons. I picture a gazelle racing across the desert. No, I say, I don't think that's strange at all. The Professor, Part 2. The Murray I knew, the Murray so many others knew, wouldn't have been the man he was without the years he spent working at a mental hospital just outside Washington, D.C., a place with the deceptively peaceful name of Chestnut Lodge. It was one of Murray's first jobs after plowing through a master's degree and a PhD from the University of Chicago. Having rejected medicine, law, and business, Murray had decided the research world would be a place where he could contribute without exploiting others. Murray was given a grant to observe mental patients and record their treatments. While the idea seems common today, it was groundbreaking in the early 50s. Murray saw patients who would scream all day, patients who would cry all night, patients soiling their underwear, patients refusing to eat, having to be held down, medicated, fed intravenously. One of the patients, a middle-aged woman, came out of her room every day and lay face down on the tile floor, stayed there for hours as doctors and nurses stepped around her.